In this video, I'm going to show you how to download and install Kali Linux. In this example, I'm using a Windows 10 computer, and we're going to use a VirtualBox to host Kali Linux on Windows 10. Virtualization software such as VirtualBox allows you to run what are called virtual machines within your computer. So rather than having to install Kali Linux on your computer, you simply run Windows and then run Kali Linux within a virtual machine. So the first thing to do is to go to virtualbox.org and then click Download a VirtualBox. VirtualBox is free software that you can download and use for personal use. So there's no cost to using VirtualBox if you want to use it for studying. I'm going to download VirtualBox for Windows because I'm using a Windows computer here. I'm going to click Save to save it to my local computer. You simply need to wait now for the VirtualBox software to download, and then you can install it. You can search for Kali Linux in Google or your favorite search engine by simply typing Kali Linux. And in my example, the first hit is kali.org, or you could just browse to kali.org. On the downloads link, click Download Kali Linux to download it. In this example, I want to download Kali Linux for VirtualBox. I want to download a pre-built OVA or virtual machine. So the way to do that is to scroll down and select this option, Kali Linux 64-bit VirtualBox. Now, if you've got a really old version of Windows, you'll get the 32-bit version. But for most of us today, it's going to be 64-bit. I'm going to click on this link, Offensive Security Download Page. And then I'm going to scroll down and notice they have VMware images and VirtualBox images. Now, sometimes I've had problems using these links in Microsoft Edge, so I'm going to use Google Chrome. And I'm simply going to paste that option into Google Chrome. So scrolling down again, I want the VirtualBox images, 64-bit. Click Download. That's now downloading to my local computer. Okay, so while that's downloading, I'm going to install VirtualBox. This is the VirtualBox software that's been downloaded. I'm going to double click on that. Click Run. I'm basically going to take default options here. So I'm going to click Next, click Next, click Next, click Yes, click Install. So very basic installation. Click Yes to allow it to make changes to Windows. The software is now installed. Now you may have to install virtual adapters when you install VirtualBox. In this example, I didn't have to because I had an older version of VirtualBox previously. But basically just accept all the defaults and click Yes to the installation prompts. I'm going to click Finish here to start VirtualBox. And there you go, VirtualBox has now been installed. In this example, it's VirtualBox 6.0. So all I need to do now is wait for my OVA to download. Okay, so that's now downloaded. This is the version I've just downloaded. This is an older version of Kali Linux. So what I'm going to do is go to VirtualBox and click File Import Appliance. I'm going to browse to my Downloads directory and select this new version of Kali Linux and click Open. Click Next. I'm going to leave all the values at default and click Import. VirtualBox now imports the OVA and essentially creates a virtual machine with the settings from that OVA. Now, if you're not sure what an OVA is, it's basically an open virtual appliance, which is essentially a tar file or, as an analogy, a zip file with what's called an OVF directory inside of it. OVF, or Open Virtualization Format, is an open standard for packaging and distributing virtual appliances, or more generally software to be run in virtual machines. So basically it's a single file that contains everything you need to run a virtual machine. Okay, so Kali Linux has been imported into VirtualBox. I'm going to go to settings to view the settings of this virtual machine. Notice the name. Type of operating system used is Linux, 64-bit Debian Linux. We see some invalid settings here. We're told that this device uses USB 2.3. However, this requires the Oracle Virtual Machine VirtualBox extension pack to be installed. You can either install this or disable USB 2, USB 3. So for the moment, I'm just simply going to go back to USB 1 because I'm not going to be adding USB ports to the virtual machine. I'm going to go back to settings. Notice the error messages have been removed. Under system, notice 2 gig of RAM has been allocated to Kali Linux. You can go down to 1 gig, but I've had problems doing that. So generally, I would recommend at least 2 gig of RAM. Processor is set to 2. You could go down to 1 processor if your computer doesn't support it. But I generally like to stick with the defaults of the OVA that's been imported. So 2 CPUs and 2 gig of RAM. Click OK. And what I'm going to do now is click Start to start up Kali Linux. VirtualBox is starting. Notice when I click in the virtual machine, my mouse is captured. But that's okay. The right control key on your keyboard will release your mouse. You told that here, right control key. Now I'm going to go with the default of Kali GNU Linux and start up Kali Linux. As you can see, it's now booting up. I'll close this window in the background. And what you'll see is Kali Linux is now booting up. Okay, default username is root. Password is root backwards, so TOOR. Click sign in or press enter to log into Kali Linux. And there you go, Kali Linux is installed and ready to go. That's all I had to do to get Kali Linux running on my computer. Now one thing to note is under machine settings, under network, at the moment it's using NAT. You could bridge this to your network if you wanted to. For the moment, I'm just going to use NAT because that keeps things simple. I'm going to open up a terminal and notice I'm going to ping google.com. And as you can see there, I've got internet connectivity. Applications menu shows me various applications for information gathering, vulnerability analysis, web application analysis, database assessment, password attacks, wireless attacks, reverse engineering, and many other attacks. I'm simply going to go to favorites and click Firefox just to show you that I've got internet connectivity. So once again, I can go to google.com and I can access Google. Now you can make your virtual machine bigger, so simply resize it and it will automatically resize the virtual machine to give you more real estate. So it's easier to read like that. I can close Firefox down as an example. So that's a basic installation of Kali Linux within a VirtualBox. We downloaded a pre-built OVA and then we imported that into VirtualBox and booted it up. And there you go, you've got Kali Linux running in a virtual machine in VirtualBox on your computer. If you want to shut it down, simply power down Kali Linux, and there you go. That's been shut down, and then I can close VirtualBox.